Okay, students, so today's topic that we cover is a very important topic, a very important viscera rather, that is the spinal cord. Okay, so spinal cord, it is an elongated cylindrical part of central nervous system which is contained within the upper two-thirds of the vertebral canal. Okay, so spinal cord is an elongated cylindrical part of central nervous system. Cord, to learn the spinal cord, you see, this is the spinal cord. Okay, this is the spinal cord of what should we learn, because spinal cord, it is a very vast and elaborated subject and topic, so we must know our specific learning objectives. So what are the specific learning objectives? Definition and situation. Definition I have already told, and situation, it is very important. Okay, role of spinal cord as part of CNS, extent, beginning and termination, parameters, some measurements, regional classification, coverings and spaces around spinal cord, very important, gross anatomy, external feature, gross anatomy, internal features including tracts, blood supply and clinical anatomy. Okay, so we learn it one by one. So first, the definition and situation. Okay, so spinal cord is the distal, narrow, cylindrical and elongated part of CNS. Okay, you see, this is the brain. Okay, this is brain, this is the forebrain, and this is the hindbrain. This is the spinal cord. Okay, so distal, narrow, cylindrical, elongated part, situated in the upper two-thirds of vertebral canal as a continuation of medulla oblongata of hindbrain. Okay, this is the hindbrain. So as the continuation of medulla oblongata, it is situated in the upper two-thirds of vertebral canal. Okay, so this is the definition, this is the situation. A peculiarity is it is somewhat flattened ventrodorsally. Okay, and the spinal cord is concerned with the reception of different modalities of sensory input, integrates and associates the information and produces reflexes response of basic characters. Okay, so what are the functions? The spinal cord, it has different modalities of sensory input, integrated and associated information and produces reflexes response of basic characteristics. Okay, okay, so role of spinal cord as a part of CNS, it is very important. Listen very carefully. Role of spinal cord as a part of CNS, as a part of CNS. It is not a part, it is a part of CNS. Okay, it is mistakenly written, it is a part of CNS. Okay, so it provides innervation. Innervation means nerve impulse. Okay, it provides innervation to the trunk and limbs through its peripheral outflow known as spinal nerves. Okay, so innervation to the trunk and limbs through spinal nerve. Next, it receives sensory information or input from the receptors distributed peripherally in the trunk and limb and transmits into the brain. Okay, receives sensory input. Third, very important, it contains cell groups of some levels, not throughout the spinal cord, which form spinal autonomic centers. So spinal autonomic centers are nothing but sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, and these send impulses to the autonomic effector organ. What are the effector organs? Smooth muscles, exocrine glands, these are the effector organ. Okay, and to receive sensory information from the visceral wall, to receive the sensory information from the visceral wall. Okay, so it forms the local circuit known as the reflex arc, okay, which regulates some bodily functions at the unconscious level. So these are the functions, these are the role of spinal cord as a part of CNS, as a part of CNS, okay, not apart. Now extent, beginning, it begins as a continuation of medulla oblongata beyond foramen magnum at the level of upper border of C1. Okay, it begins as continuation of medulla oblongata beyond foramen magnum at the level of upper border of C1 or atlas. Okay, and the termination, it terminates as a conical end known as the conus medullaris. Okay, termination terminates as a conical end known as the conus medullaris at the level of intervertebral disc between L1 and L2. Okay, a connective tissue known as phylum terminally extends from the conus medullaris downwards to be attached to the first piece of coccyx. So basically it ends at the L1 and L2. Now from this level, from the conus medullaris, a connective tissue known as phylum terminally extends from conus medullaris and it goes downward and attached to the back of first piece of coccyx. Some special notes: during the extreme flexion of vertebral column, cord ascends to the lower thoracic vertebral level. Okay, in newborn, the termination lies opposite the L3 vertebra. There are some embryonic variations. In intrauterine life, the spinal cord extends along the entire length of vertebral canal up to 3rd month, and thereafter the vertebral column grows more rapidly than the spinal cord. Eventually, the lower end of the cord lies much higher than the corresponding vertebral segment. So in intrauterine life, the spinal cord extends along the entire length of vertebral column. So vertebral column length equal to the length of spinal cord up 3 months. So as the vertebral column extends and vertebral column proliferates and it gains its own length, the spinal cord, it have a limit up to the L1 and L2. Okay, next the parameters. Now the length of spinal cord is 18 inch and 45 centimeters in adult male and 42 centimeters in adult female. Now your homework is, what are the other structures with 45 centimeters? It is your homework. Okay, what are the other structures with 45 centimeters in human body? And you may add 1 or 2 points from our medical field. Okay, and the weight of spinal cord is 30 gram. Okay, so this is the regional classification: approximate vertebral levels and the spinal cord segment. Now the upper cervical, the spinal segment C2 corresponds with the vertebral level. Okay, in upper cervical C1 and C2, the spinal segments corresponds with the vertebral level. Okay, in same level. In case of lower cervical segment from the C6, the vertebral level approximate is a C5. 1 vertebra above. In case of thoracic, 2 vertebra above. In case of lower thoracic, upper thoracic 2 vertebra, lower thoracic 3 vertebra above. Okay. Now lumbar, the spinal segment varies 3 or 5 vertebra above, and in case of sacral and coccygeal segment, the vertebral level, it varies 6 to 10 vertebra above. Okay. So basically there are some spinal segments, right, from C1 to S5. These are the spinal segments of the spinal cord. The spinal segments is not fully corresponds with the vertebral level. We have cervical vertebra, thoracic vertebra, lumbar vertebra and sacral vertebra, okay, and coccygeal vertebra. But spinal cord ends at the L1. But the spinal segments, if we cross-sect the spinal cord according to the segments, the spinal segments are there. Spinal segments are there up to the C1 phylum terminally, okay. But the vertebral level where the spinal cord ends, that is the L1. So the spinal segment is not fully corresponds with the vertebral level. These are the rule. Now comparison between the cervical and lumbar spinal segments. First, the extent. Cervical spinal segment or cervical enlargement is from C5 to T1. Lumbar enlargement is L2 to S3. Okay. Now the vertebral level from C3 to T1. Okay, from C3 to T1, this is the vertebral level. Lumbar segment, the vertebral level, it ends at the L1. So from T9 to L1. Widest circumference 38 millimeter and 35 millimeter in case of lumbar segment. Innervation, cervical segment innervates the muscles of upper limb and their associated girdles. The muscles of lower limb are innervated by the lumbar segment. Okay. Now you see, I think it is quite clear. This is the spinal cord. This is the spinal cord, total spinal cord, up to this coccygeal root. But the spinal cord basically ends at the level of L1. Okay. So these are the cervical segments of the spinal cord. These are the thoracic segments of the spinal cord. These are the lumbar segment, sacral segment and coccygeal segment. So basically you see the lumbar segment, lower lumbar segment, sacral segment and coccygeal segment, it does not correspond with the vertebra because it ends at the lower border of L1. Okay. So basically the corresponding vertebra of the sacral, lower lumbar, coccygeal segment is much higher than the spinal segments. So sacral segment, so for the sacral segment, the vertebral corresponding part is L1. Coccygeal segment L1. Okay, because L1 is the end. You see, this is the phylum terminally, this is the coccygeal nerve, and this is the first coccyx vertebra. So if it is the phylum terminally, then this should be the conus medullaris, the lower conical projecting part of the spinal cord. Okay. Okay. Now the coverings and spaces of spinal cord. Okay. The coverings means the meninges of spinal cord are the following. What are the coverings? The dura mater, arachnoid matter and pia mater. Okay. The dura mater, arachnoid matter and pia mater. You see, this is the dura mater, this is the arachnoid matter, and this is the pia mater. Okay, so meninges of spinal cord: dura mater, arachnoid mater, pia mater. Okay, now there are some peculiar thing noted in case of pia mater of the spinal cord. Now dura mater, first the dura mater. Now the dura mater, it is a tough and dense fibrous membrane. So it is the dura mater, dense and tough fibrous membrane made up of connective tissue which contains the abundant collagen fibers. That is why it is tough. It encloses spinal cord as well as cauda equina. Proximally, dura mater of spinal cord extends up to the foramen magnum of the cranium. Okay, foramen magnum of the cranium. Okay, it is continuous with inner layer of dura mater of brain. It is continuous with the inner layer of dura mater. Okay, below the dura mater extends up to the lower border of body of second sacral vertebra, beyond lower end of spinal cord, to enclose the cauda equina and the upper larger part of the phylum terminally. It is very important. Dura mater extends up to the lower border of the body of second sacral vertebra, or S2, and spinal cord ends at L1. So this L1 to S2, these segments is nothing but the lower part of the spinal cord, that is the conus medullaris. Okay, and beyond that level, dura mater is continued downward and enwrapping the external part of final terminally and blends with the periosteum of first piece of coccyx. At the level of each segment of spinal cord, dura mater prolonged outward and around the spinal nerve to attach the margin of the intervertebral foramen. Okay, now this space, I am talking about a space. Okay, at the level of each segment of the spinal cord, dura mater is prolonged outward, okay, to the margin of intervertebral foramen. Will be discussed later on in pictures. Now this space is known as the subdural space. Okay, subdural or epidural space. Okay, so inner surface of spinal dura is in close contact with the arachnoid mater. So you see, this is the arachnoid mater, and this space is known as the epidural space. Epidural space. In epidural space, so inner surface of the spinal dura is close contact with the arachnoid mater, but outer surface of the dura, this is the outer surface of the dura. Inner surface closely attached to the arachnoid mater. Outer surface of the dura is separated from the vertebral canal by a space. This space is known as the epidural space. This space contains loose areolar tissue containing fat in semi-liquid state. The epidural space also contains the plexus of veins known as the epidural venous plexus. These are the epidural venous plexus or the internal vertebral venous plexus. Okay, now there is some clinical aspect of the epidural space, subarachnoid space will be discussed later on. Okay, okay, now there are some variations of the pia mater. Now arachnoid mater, nothing to say, it is a thin transparent membrane, spider web like, and it extends upward beyond the foramen magnum to be continuous with the arachnoid of brain, and below it extends like dura mater up to the second sacral vertebra. But unlike dura mater, arachnoid mater is prolonged for short distance around the spinal nerve beyond the intervertebral foramen. Now arachnoid is separated from the pia mater with spinal cord. Arachnoid is separated by the pia mater. Now this is the pia mater. Okay, Now this is the arachnoid matter, the blue. Now between the ara and arachnoid matter and pia matter, this space is known as the subarachnoid space. If hemorrhage occurs here, it is the subarachnoid hemorrhage. If hemorrhage occurs here, it is the subdural or epidural hemorrhage. Okay. Now this is the subarachnoid septum. Now subarachnoid space, it contains thin watery fluid. Now this subarachnoid space contains the thin watery fluid named as the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid. So if we draw the cerebrospinal fluid you want to draw, you have to pierce this, if you have to pierce the needle up to the subarachnoid space. Okay, now the pia matter. Pia matter, you see there are some extensions. The pia matter is a thin delicate membrane which closely invests the surface of the spinal cord. Closely invests the surface of the spinal cord. Okay, now this is the pia matter. It closely invests the surface of the spinal cord. You see. Now there is some processes or condensations. Okay. Now this pia matter is made up of fibroreticular tissue into which is embedded a network of fine blood vessels. Okay. Now these 2 to 3 things you have to remember. One is the linea splendens. You see, it is the linea splendens. It is the condensation of pia matter along the anterior median line of spinal cord, where it dips into the anterior median fissure. Okay, dips into the anterior median fissure. This is linea splendens. And what is ligamentum denticulatum? Ligamentum denticulatum, it is the bilateral pial septum. These are the bilateral pial septum. Okay, throughout the whole length of spinal cord, in between the lines of attachment of vertebral and dorsal nerve root. Okay, vertebral and dorsal nerve root. Lateral margin of ligamentum denticulatum is ragged and presents 21 to 22 tooth-like pointed projections. In close observation, it is noted. That is why it is called as denticulatum. Tooth-like pointed projections. It is called as denticulatum. The first pair is situated above the margin of foramen magnum, and last pair is longer and oblique. It is attached at the level of conus medullaris and descends obliquely downward and laterally between the 12th thoracic and first lumbar nerves. The ligamentum denticulatum you see in the next slide. Okay. Now see, this is the transection of spinal cord. This red area, it is the pia mater. This is the subarachnoid space. So this is the arachnoid matter. In between arachnoid and pia mater, the space is subarachnoid space, contains the cerebrospinal fluid. In between the arachnoid matter and dura mater, the space is the arachnoid matter and dura matter. The space is no name of the space. In between the cranial vault and the dura mater, the space is the epidural or subdural space. Okay. Now you see, this is the pia mater. This is intervertebral foramen. This is the trunk of spinal nerve, dorsal ramus and ventral ramus. So this dentate projection is known as the ligamentum denticulatum. Okay, throughout the whole length of spinal cord it is present, and attachment, the line of attachment is ventral and dorsal root, between the ventral and dorsal root. So between the ventral and dorsal root, so these two are the roots and these two are the ramus. The ventral and dorsal root, the ligamentum denticulatum present. Okay. Gross anatomy already discussed. Okay. Now posterior view of the spinal cord showing the forked lowest tooth of ligamentum denticulatum. You see, these are the lowest tooth of the ligamentum denticulatum. This is the posteromedian sulcus. posterolateral sulcus. So in between the posteromedian and posterolateral sulcus, the area is the posterior area. In between the posterolateral sulcus and the anterolateral sulcus, anteriorly, the area is known as the lateral area. Okay, now this is the denticulate ligament or ligamentum denticulatum. Okay, you see, this is the posterior nerve root, this is the anterior nerve root, and this conical tooth-like projection is known as the ligamentum denticulatum in between the two roots. Okay, now this is very important. Factors protecting the cord and keeping it in position. So cord is protected by basically the bony cage of the vertebral canal, spinal meninges, and hydrostatic cushion of CSF inside the subarachnoid space, and held in position by rostral continuity of medulla oblongata, caudal fixation with filum terminali and cauda equina, and lateral suspension with the help of teeth of ligamentum denticulatum. Lateral suspension, caudal flexion, rostral continuity. Okay. Okay, so this is the spinal cord. These are the spinal nerves. You see, these are the spinal nerves. Now this is the pia mater. These conical part, this is the ligamentum denticulatum. This is the arachnoid mater reflected part. Okay, and this is the spinal blood vessels. This is the anterior view or the anteromedian, anterior view of the anteromedian fissure. Anteromedian fissure corresponding with the anterior spinal artery. So this is the anterior spinal artery, anterior spinal vessels. The spinal cord, same thing. Anterior median fissure, these are the vessels. Reflected end, pia mater. Okay, now these are the denticulate ligament. You see, these are the denticulate ligament between the two roots. Between the two roots, you see the anterior root and the posterior root. So between the anterior root and the posterior root, this is the posterior root, this is the anterior root, one thing is present, this is projection of the pia mater, that is the ligamentum denticulatum. Okay, okay, these are the denticulate ligament. Now dorsal root of spinal nerve, lumbar enlargement of the spinal nerve, spinal cord, conus medullaris, and these are the cauda equina. Cauda equina named as cauda equina because the hairs of the tail of a horse is known as equine. So cauda equina. Okay, hairs of the tail of a horse, cauda equina. Okay, the same picture, you see cut edge of the dura, this is the cauda equina. These are the spinal nerves. Okay, now the internal structures including tracts. Now you see, in spinal cord, the gray matter, it is the central canal. It consists of somas or cell bodies and glial cells, and white matter, it is outside the gray matter, contains axons, consists of axons, and nerves are organized into tracts or column. In case of spinal cord, the gray matter, it is inside and white matter outside. In case of brain, the gray matter outside and white matter inside. Okay, so tracts are peripheral, like peripheral nerves, it contains the tracts. So tracts goes peripheral to central, peripheral from the spinal cord to the central, to the brain. Okay, now organization of gray matter. Now somas are organized into two groups of nuclei, sensory and motor, very well known, and transverse view, it shows the posterior grey horn, lateral grey horn, anterior grey horn. The posterior grey horns, that is somatic sensory and visceral nuclei. Lateral grey horn, that is visceral motor, and anterior grey horn, somatic motor. These all are told by me in the class of cranial nerve nucleus. Okay, and the grey commissures consist of actions containing crossing from the one side to another. Now organization of the white matter, okay, consists of funiculi, the posterior white column, anterior white column, lateral white column. So ascending tracts are the sensory tracts. Okay, these are the afferent pathway, sensory tracts. It receives the input from the periphery and goes to the brain through the spinal cord, the sensory tract, and the motor tracts are descending tracts. Okay, the same picture, it is the posterior funiculus, anterior funiculus, lateral funiculus. These are the peripheral zone, white matter, and this is the grey matter. Grey matter, this is the posterior grey horn, anterior grey horn, and intermediolateral grey horn or intermediate grey horn. Okay, so these all are discussed in your histology class. Cross section through the cervical segment of the spinal cord. This is the cervical segment. You see the posterior horn, anterior horn, no intermediolateral horn. Intermediolateral horn is mainly present in the thoracic segment. Okay, you see this is the cervical segment. Posterior horn, broad anterior horn. These segments are varies. So broad anterior horn and long and slender posterior horn in case of cervical segments. Now slender posterior horn and slender anterior horn, not broad, along with the lateral horn, that is the thoracic segment. Lumbar segment, the bulbous and short posterior horn along with the bulbous and short anterior horn. And in case of sacral segment, massive and ovoid posterior horn and massive and ovoid anterior horn. So intermediolateral part or lateral horn is only present in the thoracic segment. Now you see, this is a cross section of spinal cord at the cervicothoracic region, showing the tracts in the white funiculi, okay, white funiculi, and somatotopical fiber arrangement. Somatotopical fiber arrangement. Okay, so you see in the anterior funiculi, this is the anterior funiculi. You see in the anterior funiculi, the peripheral fibers are descending fibers. The peripheral fibers are the descending fibers. What are the descending fibers? Peripheral fibers. You see, olivospinal, lateral vestibulospinal, tectospinal, anterior corticospinal, and medial vestibulospinal. These are the tracts. Okay. Now you see corticospinal, the anterior corticospinal tract. Okay. Now medial reticulospinal tract will be discussed later on. This is the tectospinal tract, I have already mentioned, lateral vestibulospinal tract and olivospinal tract. Okay. Now intermediate fibers are ascending. These are the intermediate fibers. Now intermediate fibers are the ascending fibers. The anterior spinothalamic, spinotectal, and spinoolivary. You see anterior lateral spinothalamic, this is the anterior spinothalamic. So anterior spinothalamic, spinotectal, anterior spinothalamic, spinotectal, and spino-olivary. Okay, spino-olivary. Lateral in the lateral funiculi, posterior fibers are ascending. Okay, you see, this is the now anterior funiculi, lateral funiculi, and posterior funiculi. Okay, these we have to learn. Okay, so this is the anterior funiculi, this is the lateral funiculi, and this is the posterior funiculi. Now you know the posterior funiculi, the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus present, already discussed. In lateral funiculi, the posterior peripheral fibers are ascending. So what are the peripheral fibers? The lateral spinothalamic tract and the spino-reticular fibers of the deeper stratum in the spino-reticular fibers. Okay, the intermediate fibers are descending corticospinal, rubrospinal, and lateral reticulospinal. Okay, the tracts will be discussed in detail in case of in physiology class. Okay, the ascending and descending tracts are discussed in detail in your physiology class. You have to know the gross anatomy. Okay, now a section of spinal cord showing the attachment of nerve root. So this is the nerve root, posterior root, anterior root. In between, ligamentum denticulatum present. Now the most important thing of spinal cord, that is the blood supply. It is a very potential long question. Okay. Now the blood supply, it's the main blood supply of the spinal cord from the anterior and posterior branch of the vertebral artery. Now this is the vertebral artery. Okay, the anterior spinal artery and this is the posterior spinal artery. Okay, so from the vertebral artery, the anterior and posterior spinal artery arises, and from the segmental spinal branches of deep cervical, this is the segmental spinal branch of deep cervical, ascending cervical, deep cervical, ascending cervical, intercostal and lumbar artery. These are the lumbar artery and these are the intercostal artery. Okay, so ascending cervical artery, the anterior radicular branch, ascending cervical artery, anterior radicular branch. From the branch of the deep cervical artery, some branches of the intercostal artery and the lumbar artery. Okay, now one artery is very interesting, arteria radicularis magna or artery of Adam Quis, will be discussed later on. Okay, so these are the arterial supply. Now these branches from three longitudinal arterial trunk, you see, this is a longitudinal arterial trunk, this is another longitudinal arterial trunk, and this is the longitudinal arterial trunk. So these three longitudinal arterial trunk, the anterior median, three branches are there, three branches from the three longitudinal arterial trunk, the anterior median and two posterior. Okay, so anterior median artery, this is the anterior median branch, and these two are the posterior. Okay, the anterior arterial trunk, you see, this is the anterior arterial trunk, extends throughout the cord along the anterior median fissure. Along the anterior median fissure. Each posterior trunk, often double and less prominent, extends close to the attachment of dorsal nerve root. These are the two posterior trunk. Three arterial trunk communicate around the cord, forming a pial plexus that is known as vasa corona. Pial plexus, okay, known as the vasa corona, will be discussed in the next slide. The fourth part of intracranial vertebral artery provides two spinal branches. Okay, fourth part of the vertebral artery, it provides two spinal branches, anterior spinal artery and the posterior spinal artery. Each anterior spinal artery passes downward and medially, joins with the fellow of opposite side from the anterior arterial trunk, which descends along the anterior median fissure and reinforced at intervals by the branches of anterior radicular artery. Now this anterior radicular artery is basically a branch of ascending cervical artery. Okay, so anterior radicular artery. Each posterior spinal artery, a branch of posterior inferior cerebellar artery. This is the posterior spinal artery. So posterior spinal artery, basically it is a branch of posterior inferior cerebellar or PICA or the vertebral artery. Okay, usually divides while descending into two collateral arteries along the medial and lateral sides of the dorsal nerve roots, along the medial and lateral sides. Okay, and anastomose with the posterior radicular artery. Now this is the posterior radicular artery, anterior radicular artery, posterior radicular artery. Okay, now each posterior spinal artery anastomose with the posterior radicular artery. The spinal branches of rest of the arteries, that is the segmental arterial feeders, reach the cord as the anterior and posterior radicular arteries along the corresponding root of spinal nerve. Now basically majority of the anterior radicular arteries are slender and terminate by distributing branches to the ventral nerve root or by forming plexus in the pia mater. About a quarter of anterior radicular arteries are enlarged in the lower cervical, lower thoracic and upper lumbar region. Okay, so these great radicular arteries approaches the anterior median fissure. These great radicular arteries approaches the anterior median fissure into short ascending and long descending branches, anastomose with one another with the anterior spinal artery to complete the anterior arterial trunk. The largest of the great radicular artery is known as the arteria radicularis magna or artery of Adam Cuvis. Okay, the arteria magna sends one branch to the anterior arterial trunk. You see, one branch to the anterior arterial trunk and another to the corresponding posterior trunk. Okay, another to the corresponding posterior trunk. It provides nutrition to most of the lower two-thirds of the spinal cord. It is curiously observed that when arteria magna is higher in position, the great anterior radicular arteries are less in number. But when it is located lower in position, the laticular artery increases in number. The arteria radicularis magna, it is the great radicular artery or very large bore radicular artery. If it is present in higher position, the radicular branch are less because it is there, na? It is the arteria radicularis magna. It is there to supply this elongated portion of the spinal cord. Okay, The posterior radicular arteries are small in size. The posterior radicular arteries are very small in size and more in number than the anterior radicular artery. So small in size and more in number. They join with the posterior spinal arteries and form a pair of posterior arterial trunk. Okay, each centimeter of the anterior median trunk provide 5 to 8 central branches. Okay, so arteries within the cord do not anastomose except at the capillary level. It is very important line. Okay, the arteries within the cord do not anastomose except at the capillary level, and therefore they are the end arteries. Okay, the anterior trunk supplies the ventral 2/3 of the cross section of the spinal cord. The rest of the cord supplies the posterior arterial trunk by the vasa corona. Vasa corona discussed in the next slide. Okay, now the spinal branches of the vertebral artery provides the nutrition of upper cervical cord segments. Spinal branches of the vertebral artery provides the nutrition of the upper cervical cord segment C7 to T1. The radicular branches, ascending cervical and deep cervical artery supply the area from the 7th cervical to 2nd thoracic. You see, this segment is C7 to T2. Below T2 supplied by the anterior radicular branch of ascending cervical artery. Okay, so below T2 the radicular branches of the aortic, intercostal and lumbar artery. The certain zones of spinal cord which are meeting place of different major arteries, they are very vulnerable to ischemic because all the anastomosis are at the capillary level. So these are the end arteries. Okay, such vulnerable zones are mainly T1 to T4 and L1 segments. Okay, so next slide. Yes, it is very important. You see, posterior spinal artery, anterior spinal artery. This is the anterior radicular artery from the transverse cervical artery. Okay, anterior radicular artery from the ascending cervical artery. So this anastomosis is at the level of precapillary level in between the pial plexus. So this is basically vasa corona. Okay, vasa corona. All the cords are supplied by vasa corona. So roughly speaking, anterior trunk supplies the ventral 2/3 of the cross section. Anterior trunk, it supplies the ventral 2/3. Okay, rest of the cord is supplied by the pair of posterior arterial trunk and by the vasa corona. This is the arterial supply of the spinal cord. A very potential long question. This is the blood supply of spinal cord. The slides already mentioned. Okay, already mentioned. You see the same picture in a different manner. Same picture in different manner. Now the veins. Now the veins of venous drainage of the spinal cord. About 6 longitudinal tenous veins drain the blood from the spinal cord. Okay, in the posteromedian and posterolateral venous channel, anteromedian and anterolateral venous channel. Okay, one lie along the anteromedian fissure, 2 lateral venous channel. Okay, anteriorly. So there are 6 channels, one anterior, one posterior median, 2 anterolateral, 2 posterolateral. Okay, these are the venous channels, and they all drain into communicate with the internal vertebral venous plexus and drain into the vena cava and azygous venous system. Okay. Now applied or clinical anatomy. Lumbar puncture. You see the spinal cord ends at the level of L1, so you have to puncture the puncture by a needle, the lumbar puncture needle, and go to the subarachnoid space to drain the CSF, usually at the level of L3 and L4. Okay, L3 and L4. Now there are different tracts. Okay, so afferent and efferent tracts. So tracts, all the tracts will be discussed in the physiology class. Okay, now only the applied part, for the applied part, the affecting different system and different tracts, it causes different diseases that you have to know just the names of those diseases. Okay, now this is the afferent and efferent. Afferent, if afferent part affects, dorsal nerve root may affect, posterior white funiculus may affect, spinothalamic tract may affect, and there is a condition called as syringomyelia. Okay, now lower motor neuron paralysis, upper motor neuron paralysis, lesions of affecting both upper and lower motor, that is called as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Now if the dorsal nerve root affect, the irritation of the fibers of the dorsal nerve root may take place by a comprehensive force due to slip disc. Okay, now extramedullary tumor or by inflammation, this is manifested by the sharp pain over the affected dermatome, and occasional paresthesia and numbness and prickling sensation. Okay, and in complete destruction of the dorsal root, it appears ipsilateral and segmental loss of modalities of sensation, that is loss of exteroceptive sensation, loss of consciousness of muscle sense, loss of unconscious muscle sense, loss of visceral sense, loss of reflex function, areflexia, atonia, all are there. Now if there is a problem in the posterior white funiculus, locomotor ataxia is there. It is very common in case of teres dorsalis, will be discussed in the next slide. Okay, so what are the others problems? Lesions affecting the posterior and lateral funiculi, thrombosis of anterior spinal artery, hemisection of spinal cord, Brown-Sequard syndrome, transection of the cord, and hereditary disease like Friedreich's ataxia. You see various type of lesions in spinal cord. So this is the tabes dorsalis. Okay, so posterior white funiculus, this is the posterior white funiculus. In complete lesion of the posterior column, there are loss of position sense, vibration sense, and loss of sense of stereognosis, graphesthesia, discriminative touch on the same side, and below the level of cord lesions. The locomotor ataxia is manifested in advanced case. In case of tabes dorsalis, it causes the bilateral degeneration of the dorsal nerve root and the posterior funiculi, especially in the fasciculus gracilis. You see the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus present here. Now the patient walks on a broad base with the legs apart, eyes are fixed to the ground for correcting the steps, associated with the raising of the legs excessively high with slapping the feet on the ground. It is called as Romberg sign. The ataxia of tabes dorsalis may concern with the vision. Okay. Now, if the spinothalamic tract are damaged, so two spinothalamic tracts are there, lateral and anterior. If the anterior spinothalamic tract are damaged, there is loss of touch and pressure sense on the opposite side of the body. And if the lateral spinothalamic tract is damaged, loss of pain and temperature on the opposite side below the level of lesion. Okay, so anterior spinothalamic spinothalamic tract, if it is damaged, loss of touch and pressure. The lateral spinothalamic tract, loss of pain temperature. Now next, it is the syringomyelia. Syringomyelia is a condition characterized by the cavitation of central canal. You see, the cavitation of the central canal, usually affecting the cervical enlargement of the cord. The initial manifestation are bilateral segmental loss of pain and temperature of the both extremities. Okay, because anterior spinothalamic tract, lateral spinothalamic tracts are damaged. Okay, pain and temperature. The touch escapes. Okay, because the lateral spinothalamic tract may remain normal. The dissociated sensory loss is due to the involvement of decussating the lateral spinothalamic tract in anterior white finoculus. Okay, so dissociative anesthesia, loss of pain temperature, but the regain, escapes of the touch. So this is called as the dissociative anesthesia. Okay, now lesions of the efferent systems. What are the efferent systems lesions? The flaccid paralysis or lower motor neuron lesion and spastic paralysis of upper motor neuron lesion. This will be discussed in detail in your physiology class. Okay, now this is the picture of the multiple sclerosis, anterior polio affecting the part of posterior side, posterior gray column, and this is the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis where the upper motor and lower motor both are involved. You see site of lesions of the tabes dorsalis, syphilitic degenerative lesion. This is the posterior nerve root. Okay, site of syringomyelia, central canal. It compresses the tract, dissociative anesthesia there. Okay, dissociative anesthesia, anterior spinothalamic tract damaged, lateral persist. The Brown-Séquard syndrome, or due to the hemisection of the spinal cord. In Brown-Séquard syndrome, due to hemisection of the spinal cord, here it is the left side at the level of T10, the contralateral loss of pain and temperature, and ipsilateral spastic paralysis and loss of proprioceptive sensation due to the affection of the posterior column of this side and the anterior spinothalamic tract of this side. Okay, now Friedreich's ataxia. What is the Friedreich's ataxia? It is the childhood problem. It is autosomal recessive gene. Okay, autosomal recessive gene associated with the bilateral degeneration of the Clark's column. Okay, and responsible for the FXN gene. Okay, you see, this is the picture of Friedreich's ataxia. Child with progressive ataxia, wide gait and scoliosis. Okay, so this is all about the spinal cord. It is very brief and up to the mark, up to your level. Okay, the spinal cord is a very vast subject. 3 to 4 hour class may be possible if I discuss all the features in detail, all the tracks in detail. There are lemniscal system, but these are not very important at your level. At your level, I am trying my level best to make you understand, to make the topic palatable. Okay, now you do your homework and you read the chapter thoroughly. If you have any query or question, post it to the group. Okay, thank you.